Hi, and welcome to the Carrie Barrett Show. I'm your host, Carrie Barrett. I'm a media trainer and an on-camera performance coach. Executives and business owners work with me so they're as powerful and influential on camera as they are in person. Their palms are dry, their message is clear, and they're relatable. Joining us today for the show is Brigadier General retired Mike Oster. Mike, it is fantastic to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, what a pleasure, Carrie. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to a conversation this morning.
Absolutely. Joining us from South Dakota. How's the weather?
That's correct. Yeah. It's
Feeling-
usually pretty cold this time of year, but I actually played golf yesterday in our hometown here in Rapid City. It was 64 degrees for about the third day in a row. So got to go play golf. That's very rare in January in South Dakota.
Yeah, you were quite a bit warmer than we were by about twice.
Yeah. It's been unseasonably warm, but it's been a nice break from a long winter.
Yeah, I bet. Well, it's very good to have you with us. A quick introduction to you, to the audience. You have studied excellence and performance. I mentioned you were in the United States Army, retired as a brigadier general. You've written books, worked for Fortune 500 companies, married 30 years, raised 4 kids. That in and of itself is no small feat, but you've held elected office, started a couple of businesses, Oster Consulting being one of them. And your overall mission is to help people perform at a level, and this is to use your words, where excellence is their average. And it sounds intimidating and perhaps almost impossible, but I want to start by asking you this question. What is the biggest thing, and I'm guessing it might have to do with mindset a little bit, that holds people back from excellence being their average or living in sort of that excellent kind of way?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. It's, Making Excellence Your Average is the subtitle of a book I wrote a few years ago. And the title of that book is It Starts with Attitude. And I believe that that's what makes or breaks us when it becomes a choice that we make when life happens. Because life happens to us every day, all day long, from the time you get up and make a choice on your attitude to things that happen throughout the day, traffic, or the car doesn't have enough gas to get to work, or you're out of milk, or, all these attitude choices that we make. And those choices determine whether or not we can live where excellence becomes our average. And so it's really working that mindset to be in a place where when life happens, and it's going to, do I go positive or negative on that choice? And how do I see it? What lens am I looking at it through? And it all starts with attitude. And so I truly believe that. And it's finding a way to get to a headspace where, yeah, life happened and I'm going to go positive. I'm going to find something good and I'm going to move on and I'm going to grow from this instead of, going through this.
To the audience, if you're listening live or perhaps listening or watching to this in replay, I'd love for you to drop a quick comment in the chat and let us know if you've sort of experienced this. And you obviously have. If you're living, you have experienced all of those multiple moments throughout the day where you have to choose attitude and being negative within it, or if you are going to choose an attitude of positivity. So let us know where you have experienced this, perhaps already in your day so far. And if you have a question for Mike, you can drop it in there as well. But what do you think is the primary difference in whether somebody chooses, and sometimes it's so baked in, maybe you don't even realize that you're making that choice, but where is it that you choose negativity or positivity? Is it resistance or, I don't know, unwillingness perhaps to accept that this particular challenge has shown up in your life at this particular moment? Is it resisting it that makes us get angry? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a couple things, mindset or mental fitness, as I call it. I talk about 4 types of fitness. There's emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental fitness. And this mental and emotional fitness, which is what we're talking about right now, when life happens, right? And you have this emotion and we can't control the emotion that we immediately have. That's just a reflex. It's what we do with that emotion that we can start to control. And so I think it's more of people just don't think about, I could train myself to go positive instead of negative. If I'm allowing the world around me to be my barometer or my trainer or the culture with which I live, and I let that kind of decide, and I'm not making a concerted effort. It would be like if I just ate whatever I wanted and I didn't do anything physically to try to stay fit, you're going to go in a certain direction, whether you like it or not. That's just
Right.
what's going to happen. And our mental and emotional fitness is the same way. So I think it's more of, if they just step back and say, okay, I could actually train myself to go positive when this happens. The emotion will happen, but then I get to choose what I do with that emotion. And so it's deciding to say, hey, I'm going to start trying to see opportunities where other people see issues, or I'm going to find a good in something that just happened and remind myself that, well, this seems bad, but at least I got X, Y, or Z. And it starts to change your perspective, which changes your mood, which changes your ability, which changes your efficiency. And it all just kind of starts, it's going to steamroll one direction or the other. And
Right.
it's making a direction for it to go. I always call it choosing good over evil. And so you're
Mhm.
making that to say, I'm going to make a concerted effort, just like I make a concerted effort to stay physically fit. I'm going to make a concerted effort to stay emotionally fit and make those good choices.
So when people are thinking about, I need to change the way that I think about life or these moments or this particular issue that's popped up, you mentioned making the choice between which way that you're going to go, how you're going to receive that issue and what you're going to do
Mhm.
with it or that challenge on as you move through it. How do you become aware? Because those little moments pop up so often and so recurringly that it's so habitual the way that we handle it. I my kids leave stuff around the floor and I immediately sort of lose my mind. The day's just starting and we're already in this pile of clutter. And it's so baked in, it's become so habitual for me that it's hard to be deliberate about and recognizing that this is happening and then picking a way to go with it. So, a tip on how we can sort of begin the process of retraining ourselves and implementing this day to day.
Yeah, the number one thing, and by the way, it's been great to get to know you a little bit as we prepared for this, and you're a very positive person. So I find it hard to believe you go very negative on anything. But um,
Ask
the
my
one
kids, they'll
thing,
tell you otherwise.
yeah, they are our honest barometer, aren't they? Uh, the one thing, and I don't remember even where I learned this, but some seminar I'm sure that I went to, and and that's all the things I talk about and preach about
Okay.
have been said before and talked about before, and we're all just repackaging now from the godfathers and godmothers of positive speak and positive attitude and all those things. And at one point, I was at a seminar, and the speaker said the first thing you need to do in the morning is smile. You need to smile yourself out of bed. And I was like, "Oh boy, here we go," you know? And he went on to say, basically, when you walk into the bathroom, you look in the mirror and your hair is everywhere and you got bad breath and you just woke up and there's sleep in your eyes, you put the biggest, cheesiest fake smile on your face that you can possibly do, and you look at yourself in the mirror, and it actually makes you laugh because you look ridiculous,
Yeah.
and it's not even real, but the laugh that you get out of that is real.
Yeah.
And so you're starting the day with a positive thought instead of negative, because a lot of us will wake up and say, "Oh, I gotta pay bills today," or
Yeah.
I my knee hurts and I went to bed and it didn't hurt and I woke up. We think of all the things that are negative in our life almost immediately, like you said, habitually when
Yeah.
we wake up. And it's just making a choice. The other thing I've learned is that even though we think now with social media and everything else and cell phones that we can all multitask, the fact of the matter is we cannot.
Yeah.
The human brain can think of one thing at one time and that's it. And so it's making a decision when those negative things start to come into our head, of blocking that negativity, pushing it out of my mind, and then immediately thinking of something positive. And it's funny that you said it's habitual because it absolutely is. And now we want to change that habit or that continued process in our head to be something that's positive instead of negative. And it doesn't happen overnight. I
Yeah.
didn't become this positive guy. I went to one seminar and came home and I was the most positive. That's not how it works.
Right.
Like anything else, it takes a while to make or break a habit. And instead of letting negative habits happen, I'm going to be purposeful in creating positive habits. And it starts with that smile yourself out of bed. It's ridiculous, but it actually works.
No, it sounds sort of reminiscent to some of the other, it's like almost like an affirmation. It's not verbal, but you stand in front of the mirror and you make a Superman or a Superwoman
Right.
pose to sort of set the tone for
Right.
the day. And it releases, whatever it is, endorphins and some of the other physiological elements that our bodies do when they are partaking in a particular action or we're trying to spur a particular behavior. So that actually makes sense. And you do this regardless of whether you wake up in the worst mood ever, you walk over to the bathroom and you're like, man, I really don't want to do this. In fact, I want to punch the mirror, but I'm still going to smile.
Right. Yeah. I would like to pretend I do this 100% of the time. But, everybody has a bad day, and as I grew in leadership positions, I understood that it was okay to have a bad day. It just wasn't okay for my soldiers to see me having a bad day.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have an off, just like when you go to the gym. Some days are better at the gym than others, and there's no such thing as a bad day to go to the gym. There might be a bad day while you're there, but every day is a good day to actually get there and try. And the same is true with attitude. You just want to make sure you're trying every day to go positive instead of negative. And so there are days that it's harder than others for sure. And that I think it's just a continued process. But like anything, pushing through and powering through and going positive on those harder days is actually more fulfilling and rewarding at the end of the day than when it's easy. And so, yeah, there's certainly days when you do want to punch the mirror. But the other thing that makes me think of, Carrie, when you bring that up is, I used to be big on, thinking in my head, you made me mad, or you make me frustrated, or and none of that is true. Certainly people's actions can have an impact on me, but I get to decide if I'm mad or angry or frustrated, or if I see what you're doing as an opportunity for me to work with you and help you grow. Or maybe it's actually me. If I see it more as okay, why am I feeling like this? So instead of that, you make me, it's really a choice on how I feel once I have the emotion and what I do with it. And it's just this constant process of trying to do those things. And as I've gone forward in this journey of about 20 years of finding this method, you just continue to try to grow every single day, become a better version today of yourself than you were yesterday, and it's a constant process for sure.
It builds. It reminds me, I believe it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, nobody can make you feel a certain way without your permission. So
Correct.
you are deciding that you're going to be angry or ticked off or frustrated or whatever it is. And you're right, there's certain impact that people in your space, especially that you see regularly, can have on you, but you're choosing how to respond, react, ignore,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
And you work with companies and people, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, in terms of their performance in a whole bunch of different ways. But when people get this element, or organizations get this element squared away, and when I say squared away, I realize it's a continuum, it's a process, it's never over. But when they have it figured out, what sort of changes do they see?
Overall, I think you see a huge change in culture. The feedback that I get is that all of a sudden people are smiling as they walk into work instead of when they walk out of work.
Right.
And so, my brother always used to say, and he was a high school educator and superintendent, and that can be a rough place to be, especially as things continue to change. And he would always say, if you're in education and you don't see purpose and you don't understand why you're doing this, if you're not whistling on your way into work, then you're in the wrong profession, because what they get to do and the changes that they get to make. Well, I would submit that 99% of us have been in a profession where if we truly step back and saw our purpose and what we could actually be doing there and the impact that we could have and the people that we touch every single day and the difference that we make, we all could be smiling on our way into work. But again, it's that choice to see why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And the outcome of that is a much better work environment, higher levels of retention, more efficiency from the employees that are in there, and overall just better mental health, which if you think about our mental health, what's happening in the 40 to 50 hours a week that we're in the workplace is affecting everything else that we do. So
Sure.
getting it right there is vitally important to all the other things and the interactions that creates, and the volunteer work you do for an organization in the community, or with the relationship that you have at home, or everything else that it impacts. So when we can impact it in the workplace, that's really where we make the biggest win and have the biggest bang for our buck kind of deal.
And that dovetails sort of nicely into what I wanted to talk to you about next, which is another sort of tagline or motto, perhaps philosophy, that you abide by and that you teach others. And that's becoming better at who we are makes us better in all we do. And it sounds like that ties into a little bit about, that which you were just speaking, which is when we are better in one place, or we have a better attitude in one place, in our workplace, let's say, for example, it infiltrates all of those other arenas. But can you explain a little bit more deeply, perhaps, about what better at who we are is specifically?
Yeah, it's that self growth of my internal humanness and the things that I bring to the table. My self esteem, the self confidence that I have, my willingness to step up and take risk because I feel comfortable in doing that. When I'm better at who I am in every arena, every part of me, how I mentally think, how I emotionally think, spiritually, whatever that is for people, and even physically, because you're also a role model for other people, whether we like it or not. Anytime that we're out and about, people are looking at us and making, assertions about us. And so the better we can be at who we are, it has such a wide ranging impact. I the one thing that we all have an equal amount of is time. And I break my time down into six main areas where I spend my time. And it's my faith, my family, my fitness, and that's the emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental. Then, of course, the career that you're in. And
Mhm.
then I give time for my social life, which I think is very important. And then also giving or volunteering. And so if I think about all those areas, they all need the best version of me to show up as much as possible. And so as I continue to grow and get better in all those areas, right? Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, I bring a better version of Mike Oster to those events and those organizations and my relationships with my wife, with my kids, with coworkers, or with even people I play golf with. You want to be a better version of you because you're having an impact on them. You're either filling their bucket or you're taking out of it. And so as I grow and get better and become a better version of myself or a better version of who I am, I'm better in all those other areas.
Mhm.
And that's really, if we're all working to that, that's how you change a world. That's how and it seems a little grand, but you truly can have an impact on the world one person at a time, because you're going to have this interaction, which is going to affect the next interaction, and so on.
It's paying it forward to yourself and to the people around you, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, I think, a couple of times now, these sort of four areas of fitness that you have identified. You ran through them quickly before, but if you could go through them a little bit more slowly and explain what they are and why they're so important to integrate.
Sure. So, of course, I have to have an acronym because I'm a military guy, and for the military folks out there listening, every person that has ever joined the military has to go through what's called MEPS, and it's MEPS, and it's Military Entrance Processing Station. And so, in order to get in the military, you have to go through MEPS. And so, I would always tell my military folks, soldiers, and whoever I was dealing with, you had to go through MEPS to get in the military, and you have to continue MEPS to stay in. So, MEPS, right? Mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual.
Okay.
And so that works great if I'm talking to military people. But the civilian sector doesn't really understand MEPS. So I changed the acronym to ESPM, not to be confused with ESPN, our
Yeah.
sports network folks. And so that seems to resonate with others. But the point is, right, just to remember the four types of fitness. And the spiritual fitness, as I mentioned, is between you and whatever that higher power is. It might be a God that you believe in because you're a religious person, or it might be just the fact that you're out meditating or becoming one with nature or whatever that is. But there's
Mhm.
a spiritual component to all of us, and it's just a different way to look at it.
Yeah.
And so working on that and having that connection, that's one type of fitness. And if you're going to have this holistic fitness, that one is very important. And sometimes we lose sight of that one because maybe we fall away from the church, or maybe we haven't ever figured out what our spiritual connection is. And so it's having that belief in some type of higher power, or understanding that we gain energy from the world around us. And so
Mhm.
that one's probably the trickiest one to talk about because it can be a little polarizing. And so
Sure.
but it's about people finding what works for them. I'm not trying to tell them it should be a certain way, but finding something in that arena. And then, of course, physical fitness is between people in their gym, right?
Mhm.
And whatever that means, it could be a P90X workout, or it can be I walk the hill every day, or whatever it is. But doing something physically, because keeping our body intact and having less aches and pains has an impact on our ability to go positive instead of negative when life starts to get in our way. Because if you're
Mhm.
dealing with those things, when I was in my 30s, I thought, well, that's, who cares? You just want to be in shape to look good, and
Yeah.
whatever. Now it's really more about maintenance, and not, you go to bed fine and you wake up injured as you get a little older. Carrie, you're not old enough to know that yet, but it's coming. It's coming. And so staying physically fit is that has a tremendous impact on our mental and emotional ability to go positive, because it's frustrating to not be in shape and not be able to walk a flight of stairs without breathing hard, or tell your grandkids that I can't get down on the floor and play with you because then grandpa can't get back up. So all those things start to weigh on your mind. So that being physically fit doesn't mean you have to go in and bench 300 pounds, but you need to be doing some cardio 3 or 4 days a week, some cardio, some weight training. Just keep your body as an asset and not a liability.
Yeah.
And then
It's
the
what,
emotional and mental part of it, emotional fitness is that one that's really, really challenging, because there's no emotional gyms out there. There are more apps and things that we can do now that are emotionally related or emotional fitness related, but it's really, daily affirmations, daily gratitude journaling, thinking about my wins, having a tight circle of people around you that remind you that you've won before, you can win again, even if life knocked you down, you've gotten up before. And so that emotional piece is, I think, the most important, but also the most challenging to work on. And
mhm,
it's really just having that network of people and that internal ability to remind yourself that you're a great person. You've won before and you can get back there, and all the things that go along with that, and creating that habit of positive self-talk instead of our habitual negative self-talk, which most people have now.
sure.
It's the book's a little bit older now, but Shad Helmstetter wrote the book What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, and in that book identified that 77% of the time when we talk to ourselves, we talk negative.
Yeah,
And that in and of itself is so hard on our emotional fitness. So just adjusting that alone. And then, of course, mental fitness is exactly what it sounds like. It's just getting bigger, faster, and stronger mentally in whatever area I'm trying to work in, or move into, or continue in. And that might just be, and it's making sure that your mental fitness needs to be based on facts and not opinion. And a lot of, what we're seeing and hearing now on the media is all opinion based, even though they call it news.
it's not.
Mental fitness is about facts and truly understanding and being smarter in the areas that we want to be, effective in.
Sure. I could go down a rabbit hole with the new stuff, but I will
Oh yeah.
avoid it for the purposes of this conversation. When people understand, two questions here, and the first one is it hard when you're working with an organization to get them to buy in on understanding how all these four elements are important for their employee base? But do you find that they usually understand it?
It's always a percentage.
Yeah.
There's always people. There's that percentage that right away is ready. They're looking for the next thing and they're jumping in 100%. And then there's I suppose it's the old bell curve, right, that we learned about in freshman year and whatever
Mhm.
math class that was. But
Yeah.
so you have that group they're just all in. They want it that bad. Then there's kind of the middle sector where they're like, okay, I understand this. I'm not 100% sure that I buy it all, but if it can help, I'm willing to try it. But I almost always see that group of people that are going to cross their arms and think, well, this is just another flavor of the day, and this will pass, and we'll be on to the
Yeah.
next thing. And so my thing is always, it's really not about you at work. This is about you in your entire life. And
Mhm.
if I can start connecting with people that I'm not trying to just make you a better widget maker. This is about us growing as people and becoming better, again, better in all we do. And so if I'm a better husband and father, I'm going to be a better worker. I'm just
Mhm.
am. I'm going to be in a better mood when I get to work. I'm going to feel better about what I'm going home to. And so I want them to think of it more as if I grow as an individual. And
Yeah.
I rarely talk about specifics of any business or industry that I'm working with, because it's, the best asset that organization has is the human asset. And so
Sure.
I'm trying to help all of us grow together and be a better human asset. And so again, it's that buy-in is, the group that wants it right now, and the group that's really willing. And I see a little bit more willingness of this over here, this group that's usually kind of anti any new thing. They're a
Mhm.
little more willing to listen when it is more personal, and you can
Yeah.
start to relate it to their personal life rather than their professional life.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a holistic method where everything sort of works on you're with one another, and they all serve to lift one another up in all of those different areas of your life. And when you get this element, for lack of a better word, squared away, then you find that there is better productivity, it sounds like, across all areas of your life. You are able to perform better in this way and have a better relationship, and your it your mindset, perhaps. It's well, it sounds like it all sort of comes down to, in one way or another, related to mindset and attitude and just the way that you think about things, which I think brings us back to what we started talking about at the beginning of the show, which is it all sort of stems from making those small decisions. They seem small in the moment, but those small choices to respond to different things in a different way. And that's where it all sort of snowballs from. Am I getting that correctly?
1,000%. And
Yeah.
I think it's the first part of that is people saying, because you'll hear people say, well, why does this always happen to me?
Mhm.
Or why does it have to always be me? And those are the people that, and so I'm dating myself a little bit. The old Pink Panther episode where he's walking around and there's a rain cloud following him around and raining
Yeah.
only on him. And there's those people in the world that have that rain cloud, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they continue to say, and they're basically creating this environment in which life does continue to seem to hand them more challenges. And
Mhm.
so, my mindset is: it happening to me or is it happening through me? And through me means that this is happening. I'm witnessing it or participating in it. I'm glad it's me because I'm going to take it and do something positive with it. And if it's happening to me, that means somebody else doesn't have to deal with it. And maybe that somebody else isn't in a good headspace today, and it would be even harder on them. Now, some of that sounds a little bit far fetched and ridiculous. But if I think, why is this happening to me? Well, then I'm making an assumption that it's only happening to me and it's the worst luck ever. And it's just, and that's ridiculous as well. So if I'm going to be wrong one way or the other, I want
Yeah.
to be wrong assuming for good. And so I'm going to see something positive in that, or assume that the reason it's happening is to help it not have to happen to somebody else. And then it can be through me, right? It's happening through me so I can divest it and try to, make it go away and not affect other people. So that's the first part. And then it's growing through challenges that happen to us instead of going through challenges that happen to us. So again, it's just a perspective, just a lens through which I see the world, and a choice to say, "Oh, this is hard, but hard can be good because I'm going to grow through this and I'm going to come out on the other side better than I was before." And
Mhm.
so it's you're right, it's the mindset of a decision that is really just a perception of the event around us and how it's impacting us, and whether it's good or bad, and how I see it. And then the final thought I would give you on that is, one of the things I did kind of in the middle of my career was, in a military briefing, the last slide was always, the title was always issues. Like, what's happening around you that's not allowing you to do your job or complete your mission. And
Mhm.
essentially, when you ask somebody what their issues are, you're also saying, and tell me whose fault it is.
Right.
And so you would always get this very negative feedback, and we would end these briefings with, very negative, this is, BS or whatever. And
Yeah.
so in one meeting, it just occurred to me that, you know what, I'll bet if they briefed opportunities, this would be a very different mindset. And so, of course, we changed the title of the slide from issues to opportunities. The next day we get the briefing, and people brief and they're like, well, we don't have any opportunities, sir. And I'm like, well, they're just switching a word. They're not really getting the concept.
Yeah.
And so we kind of explain more of what we're looking for. What are the things that happened during your training today that created a situation that made somebody step up and become the hero for the day, or made your training even better? So now you're even better qualified when you have to do this in combat or somewhere else. What were those things that happened that you overcame? So talk to me about the opportunities and who are the heroes. And it completely changed the mindset, the culture, and the mood in that room as people left that briefing, because they
Mhm.
started to see that, this was hard because food didn't show up when it was supposed to. But then Sergeant so and so went and found a way, a workaround, and he got everybody fed. And we actually were able to buy meat on the economy, and we grilled out, and we had this great day and built a bunch of cohesion on our team. And so they turned it into an opportunity. And so
Yeah.
shifting that mindset, like you said, is just another way of saying, I'm going to make whatever's happening around me a positive thing rather than a negative thing, because it's
Mhm.
just a choice.
It sounds so simple. And you and I spoke. My husband is retired military as well, and so I've heard about the briefings at
Yeah.
length, and how painful they can be sometimes. But really, what you're saying sounds so simple, but it does have an entire effect on not just the individual who is perhaps speaking or on the receiving end of the opportunity, but it changes the way that you think about things. Yes, this maybe went wrong, but actually if I think about it this way, it gave us, I learned this, and this person figured out that, you know this is their weak spot and they need to work on it. And maybe I found a weak spot that I didn't realize I have. And now I know how I can be better and what I need to focus on. It sounds very simple.
Right.
And it sounds like, really, does it semantics? Does it make that much of a difference? But when you take it beyond the semantics and you think about it differently, that's when all of that change happens.
Yeah, it is, and it is not simple. I mean,
Yeah.
this is something I've been working on for a long time, and it's I still find myself, my immediate reaction is to pop in kind of a negative manner.
Yeah.
And I have to kind of take that step back and go, "Oh boy, easy buddy. If you're going to preach about this, you better practice it."
Sure.
And so it's an ongoing thing. And again, to me, it really likens itself to physical fitness, which most of us can understand. Some are doing more of it than others, but we all understand the benefits of it. But we also understand how difficult and challenging it can be to carve out 30, 45, 60 minutes a day to go do that. We know
Mhm.
what the positive effects of it are. We know it's better to be in physical good shape than bad, yet it's still not something that we can get ourselves to do every single day. This is no
Right.
different. And so it's a constant, I don't want to say battle because it's not a battle. It's a constant commitment to being the best version of myself. And I guess the way that I would encourage people to think about it is this isn't about you.
Yeah.
This is about everybody that you impact. And, I often tell people that you do deserve to be the best version of yourself. But more importantly, the people that you love deserve the best version of you. And the people that have committed to work next to you every single day deserve the best version of you. So this is way bigger than just self. And so if
Yeah.
they start to think of it that way, it's a little easier to commit to it.
It's a constant opportunity.
That's exactly right.
We mentioned a little bit at the beginning of the show, what you do, but I'd love for you to share with the audience very quickly how you work with businesses and individuals. I know that you do speaking and consulting, but can you share with them a little bit the ways in which they might be able to work with you?
Yeah. So I spent 36 years serving in the military. I joined when I was a senior in high school, and I had no intention of serving for that period of time. And I joined. My dad was a Korean War veteran, so I wanted to serve in the military. But all my brothers and sisters had gone to college, so I also wanted to do that. And I found this opportunity in the National Guard that allowed me to go to school and serve. So
Mhm.
I joined as a private E1, like a lot of people do. Went to basic training and my advanced individual training, and then came home and went to college and continued to serve 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, just like the commercial says. And as things, started to escalate and get busier in the military, I had graduated from college. I had since, I went through officer candidate school and became an officer, and was continuing to serve in that part time capacity. And at about the 14-year mark, I had an opportunity to go to work for our then adjutant general in a capacity as his executive officer. And it was going to be an 18 to 24-month deal. I was going to move from one end of South Dakota to the other. And because I had clients, I had started my own business doing HR and labor relation consulting. And this was an 18 to 24-month deal, spread the business out a little bit. And in the middle of all that, 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And, a couple of combat deployments later, the next thing I knew, I had done 20 years of active duty in the National Guard and 36 years total. And that's where a lot of what I talk about now comes from, is
Sure.
seeing that at a time when I joined in the mid 80s, where we hadn't been anywhere for a while, and it was kind of just that mundane go to training, to Desert Storm, Desert Shield, where things got a little more serious, to the very unfortunate events of 9/11, and all of that created the importance and the seriousness, and it went from being this is nice to be in the military, to you better have your crap together, especially
Yeah.
as a leader, because you're going into harm's way with sons and daughters and husbands and wives and mothers and fathers. And so it became incredibly important to me as I started to learn about this stuff and try to push this through. And the military, as you know, with your husband serving, is very yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. You just
Sure.
do what you're told. Well, they're still people, right? And people perform better if you're cognizant of who they are and how they are, and kind of go through those things. So as I got done with my military career, which was incredible, it was such a privilege to serve. There's a lot of people that try to serve that aren't allowed to, so it's really a privilege to wear the uniform, and I was very called to that, and it was very purposeful. And I knew when I got done with that I wanted to do, professional speaking, training, consulting, leadership programs. And so I've been able to convert into that, and I've only been doing that for about a year. And so it's a work in progress, certainly.
Mhm.
But I do keynote speaking is kind of the primary thing I'm doing. And we just built out a leadership living in excellence program. It's a 12-week program that people can go through, and you can do it as an organization, or we do it individually with group coaching calls. And so that program, that's called Journey in Excellence, Living Where Excellence is Average. And that program is the first one will launch actually in May of this year. And so we're very excited about that. And that's getting a little bit deeper into, the keynoting is nice. I love going out and talking to groups and organizations, selling a few books and trying to make an impact that way. But having this where people can jump in and start to do the things we've talked about, how do you do that? How do you implement that? And almost just a check-in, it's every other week where we have a call, and there's about 40 minutes of content and a 20-minute Q&A. And so that's an awesome thing that we're putting together, and some great people are helping me with that. I've got a great team working on that, and I'm very excited for that. So, MikeOster.com for the keynotes or this leadership program. And it's, I feel very blessed to be in a second career where I feel very purpose driven. And, a lot of smarter people than me have kind of built this model into me. And the good Lord gave me the gift to stand in front of people and try to make an impact. And so now I'm able to do that too, which is pretty awesome. Feel pretty blessed.
Yeah. Well, we are blessed to have you in our presence and on the show today. For those of you who are listening or watching, it's MikeOster.com. That's where you can find out more about his work, his story, and how you may be able to work with him. We'll put that in the show notes. Mike, it's great to have you with us. And for those of you who are interested in working with me, you can book a free Confident on Camera strategy call. Links to that are in the show notes as well. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate the opportunity and really appreciate what you're doing as well. It's awesome work and great to get to know you.
Thank you so much. Next week, by the way, we're going to be talking about the difference between feeling nervous on camera and when you're speaking, and actually being nervous, and why the two don't necessarily always connect. So I will see you then. Audience, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you back here, same time, same place next week.